first of all, he's a top economic advisor to Donald Trump, so he's there in the mix.
Yeah.
And the president has said he wants a temporary replacement there. So it does make some sense because he's been recently confirmed. He was confirmed in March as CEA chair by the Senate. So he's got his paperwork in. There's not going to be anything he needs to add to it. And he's probably done all the financial divestitures he would need to do, that sort of thing.
The background check is done, basically?
The background check is done. They've looked at his TikTok and everything else.
He's good.
And so they could move fairly quickly. Now, the question is, what's the Senate calendar like? The Senate doesn't come back till September 2nd.
Okay.
The next Fed meeting is September 17th. There are 10 legislative days in there that they could move on this, and they need to get the paperwork in from the president. They need to go through the hearing process, which they could rocket through, but then they need to take it to the floor, and the Senate is going to be busy with a lot of other things, including the fact that there might be a government shutdown because there's no budget at this point. So it's a long shot maybe to get him in by September 17th. Mm-hmm. But the thing to keep in mind is the way Fed officials have been talking the last 48 hours, it may not matter because right now, given the economic data, they're sort of teeing up.
You're saying September 17th because that's the next FOMC meeting.
That's the next FOMC meeting. They're teeing up a rate cut then, I think, already. If the data continue the way it's going now with a relatively weak August payrolls report, and we get CPI, PPI next week, and then at the end of the month, the PCE. And if those show inflation rising a bit, but not too much, then you'd probably have a rate cut in train.
So we're talking about Miran here, and how much impact could really happen here given the fact that Kugler's term was set to expire at the end of January 2026?
Yeah, part of this is going to be how the president presents this. If Miran's going to be a long-term member of the Fed, then people will pay a lot more attention. If he's just holding a seat for 4 months and the president's going to appoint somebody else, then there's no reason to pay any attention to him because the Fed's going to be doing what the president wants anyway, probably. And so he's not going to add anything to the debate. But he has been a Fed critic. He thinks that they have been too slow. He is also, remember, the author of the Mar-a-Lago Accord idea that would see the U.S. try to weaken its dollar and get people to give up their treasuries, foreign countries to give up their treasuries.
Remember when we talked about we couldn't stop talking about it?
Yeah, so there's a lot there that the markets could focus on if they wanted to. And as I say, it would depend on how long he's going to be on the Fed, what kind of influence he would have. If the Fed's if he's done by January and the Fed's cutting rates, it's just done.
President Trump posting on social, "It is my great honor to announce that I've chosen Dr. Stephen Miran, current chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, to serve in the just vacated seat on the Federal Reserve Board until January 31st, 2026. In the meantime, we will continue to search for a permanent replacement. Stephen has a PhD in economics from Harvard University and served with distinction in my first administration. He has been with me from the beginning of my second term, and his expertise in the world of economics is unparalleled. He will do an outstanding job. Congratulations, Stephen."
Well, there's your answer.
Well, there's your answer. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to make it speculation anymore. It's not an if. Now, the important thing to remember is you can't do a recess appointment to the Fed. So he does have to be confirmed. They will have to go through the process. He will have to resign as the CEA chair. And if he doesn't stay on at the Fed and they want him to go back, then he's got to be reconfirmed. So it's a bit of a pain in the butt for him
to go back
to the CEA because the Federal Reserve Act requires that a member of the Fed board have no other job. So this isn't going to be like a Sean Duffy or a Marco Rubio thing where the president just gives them job after job because he hasn't got somebody else to fill them.
Mm-hmm. So we shouldn't make the assumption that he'll go back to that.
I would think not. I mean, I wouldn't want to take a job for 4 months, and my guess is that the pay level is about the same. But to go through the Senate confirmation process for 4 months, if that. Right. If you got 4 months, and then to have to go back and do it for the CEA again. See, if the president decides to nominate him for another 14-year term, they could put him through at both times pretty much at the same time.
Okay.
Or, he wouldn't have to really do much to get the second confirmation. Just do that in the background.
Mm-hmm. Does this bring a certain layer of certainty here? I'm looking at markets that are pairing just a touch here, but of course, we still have the idea of who's going to be Fed chair potentially.
Yes, but the story that we reported today, and again, this is Saleha Mohsen's scoops, that Chris Waller would be selected. It fits in the sense that you don't know whether Powell's going to leave the board. Now, choosing Waller might help Powell leave the board because he would feel better about the way the Fed was going to go afterwards. But he's already on the board, so you don't have to have an open seat. You can leave Miran in there, and then you can promote Waller, and it all just works together. So it does make sense.
Just real quickly, does this make Jackson Hole all a lot more interesting? Just quickly, which is coming up at the end of the month.
Yeah, it's going to make it more interesting, but it also may mean that Jay Powell doesn't want to say a whole lot.
Right.
Because there's all these balls in the air, but if the Fed's made it clear if everybody else speaking on the Fed makes it clear they're going to cut rates, then he doesn't have to prep the markets or anything.
You can't go home because the Fed headlines just keep coming.
No, I've moved under my desk. As Ariel said, like George Costanza on Seinfeld.